Yet, there is an intelligence agency so precise, so methodical, and so deeply embedded in the shadows of global power that entire governments have changed their foreign policies simply out of fear of what it knows. It has reached into the heart of enemy capitals, silently dismantled nuclear programs, hunted war criminals across continents for decades, and carried out operations so technically brilliant that even rival intelligence services study them with a mixture of awe and dread. It operates without a budget publicly disclosed, without a headquarters widely known, and without agents who ever confirm their own existence. It is not the CIA. It is not MI6. It is the Mossad, and today, you are going to understand exactly how a small nation forged the most feared intelligence organization in the history of the modern world. After the State of Israel was declared on May 14, 1948, it entered a war for its very survival before the ink on its founding declaration had even dried, facing the combined armies of Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon simultaneously, a reality that made one truth unmistakably clear to its leadership. A country, this small, surrounded by this many enemies, could never win through military power alone. Israel had no deep strategic reserves, no geographic buffers, no natural barriers to slow an invasion, and no allies willing to guarantee its survival with boots on the ground. What it did have, however, was a fierce and desperate understanding that intelligence, the ability to know what your enemy is planning before he acts, was not a luxury but an existential necessity. In 1949, Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion established the Central Institute for Coordination, which would eventually become known by its shortened Hebrew name, Mossad, meaning simply the Institute, and he tasked it with one overarching mission: to collect intelligence abroad, conduct covert operations, and counter terrorism and weapons proliferation in ways that Israel's conventional military could never achieve publicly or diplomatically. Reuven Shilo, the first director, understood that Mossad could not function like a traditional spy agency because Israel had neither the global infrastructure of the British Empire nor the financial power of the United States behind it. Instead, it would need to be leaner, faster, more creative, and far more willing to operate in the gray areas where law, morality, and necessity blur together in the darkest possible ways. When Palestinian terrorists from the Black September organization murdered 11 Israeli athletes at the 1972 Munich Olympics in one of the most publicly visible acts of political violence the modern world had ever witnessed, the Israeli government under Prime Minister Golda Meir made a decision that would define Mossad's identity. For decades to come, they would hunt every single person responsible for planning and executing that massacre, no matter how long it took, no matter how many borders had to be crossed, and no matter how diplomatically inconvenient those operations might become. Over the course of years, Mossad agents tracked targets across Europe, into the Middle East, and throughout the Mediterranean, executing what became known as Operation Wrath of God, a campaign of targeted assassinations so methodical it read more like a ledger than a war. Within Mossad's layered organizational structure exists a unit so covert that Israel officially neither confirms nor denies its existence. Known only as the Kidon, a Hebrew word meaning bayonet, and it is this unit that carries out the targeted killings, abductions, and high-risk extractions that appear in newspaper headlines without attribution and in intelligence briefings without explanation. The Kidon operatives are trained not merely as assassins, but as complete intelligence operatives capable of building entire false identities, integrating into foreign social environments for months at a time, and executing complex operations in hostile territory without any embassy support, diplomatic cover, or possibility of official rescue if something goes wrong. They are, in the truest sense of the term, people who agree to disappear so that the state may survive. Long before the Munich operation, Mossad pulled off what many historians consider the single most audacious intelligence operation of the 20th century, when in 1960, a team of agents traveled to Buenos Aires, Argentina, identified Adolf Eichmann, the Nazi SS officer directly responsible for organizing the logistics of the Holocaust living quietly under a false name, and physically abducted him from a public street before smuggling him onto an El Al commercial flight back to Israel to stand trial for crimes against humanity. The operation required months of surveillance, identity verification, and coordination across multiple countries. all conducted in a foreign nation without official authorization, without the knowledge of Argentine authorities, and with complete deniability at the government level until the mission was already accomplished. Perhaps no mission has consumed more of Mossad's resources and strategic attention over the past 4 decades than the singular objective of ensuring that Israel's most hostile neighbors never successfully develop a nuclear weapons capability, and the methods deployed in pursuit of this objective have ranged from the remarkably sophisticated to the breathtakingly bold. In 1981, acting on intelligence gathered by Mossad operatives inside Iraq, the Israeli Air Force launched Operation Opera and destroyed the Osirak nuclear reactor outside Baghdad before it became operational, a strike that would not have been possible without years of intelligence work confirming the reactor's purpose and timeline. Decades later, in Iran, Mossad conducted operations widely attributed to them that included the assassination of nuclear scientists and the deployment of the Stuxnet computer worm, which physically destroyed uranium centrifuges from within Iran's most protected facilities. Mossad's effectiveness has never rested solely on physical operations because the agency has long understood that the most powerful intelligence tool ever invented is not a weapon, a satellite, or a listening device. It is a human being whose trust has been carefully cultivated, whose loyalties have been quietly redirected, and who provides access to secrets that no technical surveillance could ever reveal. The agency has historically run extraordinarily complex human intelligence networks, known in the profession as HUMINT, that involve years of relationship building, psychological profiling, financial incentivization, ideological exploitation, and in some documented cases, romantic entrapment operations designed to place agents inside the inner circles of hostile governments, military organizations, weapons programs, and terrorist networks, yielding intelligence that has shaped Israeli national security decisions at the highest levels. No honest examination of Mossad's history is complete without a clear-eyed understanding of its failures, because it is precisely through those failures that the agency evolved into the institution it is today, and the most instructive of all was the catastrophic intelligence breakdown that preceded the Egyptian and Syrian surprise. Attack on Israel during the Yom Kippur War of October 1973, a failure so fundamental that it nearly cost Israel its existence. Despite having agents inside enemy governments, despite intercepting communications, and despite receiving multiple warning indicators in the weeks before the attack, Mossad and the broader Israeli intelligence community fell victim to a phenomenon analysts now call the conceptual failure, the dangerous human tendency to filter incoming information through the lens of what you already believe to be true, discarding evidence that contradicts your assumptions, as the 21st century. To reshape the nature of warfare, commerce, communication, and power, Mossad underwent one of its most significant organizational evolutions in its history, building what intelligence experts and cybersecurity researchers now regard as one of the most technically advanced cyber intelligence and offensive hacking capabilities of any spy agency in the world, rivaled only by the United States NSA and the signals intelligence apparatus of the United Kingdom's GCHQ. The Stuxnet operation, widely attributed to a joint American-Israeli effort directed in significant part by Mossad's technical divisions, demonstrated that a well-crafted piece of malicious code could accomplish more lasting damage to an adversary's strategic weapons program than a conventional airstrike, while leaving no physical fingerprints, triggering no formal acts of war, and maintaining complete plausible deniability in the international arena. What makes Mossad genuinely different from every other intelligence agency in the world is not its budget, not its technology, and not even the remarkable skill of its individual operatives. It is the philosophical foundation on which the entire organization was built, which holds that intelligence is not merely a tool of foreign policy, but the primary guarantor of a people's continued existence on Earth. Every Mossad director since the agency's founding has carried forward the same haunting awareness that the Jewish people came within a generation of total annihilation in the 20th century, and that the only insurance against it ever happening again is an intelligence capability so deep, so far-reaching, and so completely without mercy toward genuine existential threats that no enemy can ever again achieve the element of strategic surprise that makes genocide possible.